In this video we're going to be looking at the various changes that are possible to an approved permit. So we've logged on, we've looked at the work queue for our test installation. There's nothing outstanding. We've just had a confirmation from the competent authority that our permit's been approved, and we've now got a permit. In order to maintain that permit from time to time, there may be various sort of changes to the installation or changes to the monitoring methodology that's used to report emissions. I need to indicate that to the competent authority according to the regulatory requirements. So to find all those workflows, I first of all click on AEM permit, and I can see here my currently approved permit, and that the original permitting workflow that we started earlier. To actually make changes, I obviously need to follow the link to start a change request, and I can see here the various types of change requests that are possible. So we've got notifications, which are the equivalent to the ETS8 spreadsheets, the starter variation, which is equivalent to the ETS9, apply to surrender or rationalise my permit, which I think was ETS10, and apply to transfer, either a complete transfer or partial transfer to a new operator, which was ETS11. So I'm going to start off with, I'm going to cover variations in this video. So obviously click the button and I'm asked to confirm that I definitely do want to go down this route, and I haven't clicked on it just by mistake. It takes me to what's now a variation homepage, and again it tells me the current status of this particular application and shows me the tasks that are available to me. So even at this stage I can opt to cancel that variation, although it will always sort of exist as a record against the types of change requests that have been requested. So we're not going to cancel it. I'm going to open up the form just to show you what's required to be filled in. This is very similar to the original ETS9 form, in the sense that it's asking you a few questions about the types of changes, whether it relates to the operations that are carried out on the site or to the actual monitoring reporting methodology. We've got a new question on here which is only applicable to those operators that are carrying out a partial transfer, which are very rare. We're then prompted to provide a description of the proposed change, and this is essentially what the ETS9 form comprised of mainly. It was just a blank box for you to describe what changes are required, and it could just well be addition of a new fuel, propane. So for whatever reason this was missed out of the original permit, and maybe a verifier has picked it up during a verification visit, and we're now amending our permit to include this new fuel. And then we see some slight changes to the ETS9 form, in the sense that we're asking you to qualify the type of variation that it actually applies. Most of the variations that we process are chargeable, but there are some sort of fairly nominal cases where there is no charge. So for example, if it's a sort of simple change to the installation name or the installation address, or if there are just genuine corrections to things like meter names, but not actually new meters, then it's possible to tick the corresponding checkbox here. For a substantive change, obviously there is a charge, and that relates to the task of redetermining the permit application to take into account the new the changes that have been made. So in this particular case, it's a change in the types of fuels used. So this is just used really to categorize the type of change we are looking at. And again, there's an opportunity here for an installation that's maybe adding new equipment and increasing the net capacity of their installation to apply for the new entrant reserve. We're going to omit, we're not going to go down this route for this video. So having filled all that information in, I get to a submit button, and the context of this particular submission button is is to move the workflow along to the next stage. So having pressed this submit button, I'm not yet sending anything to the competent authority. I'm just moving on to the next stage. So I acknowledge that the form has been saved and closed. And my variation homepage that was on before has been updated now, and it's given me a new task to actually update the permit application. So when I open this form, I'll be presented with an editable version of my original permit application. So you can see this is various bits and pieces that we filled in earlier, and the particular section of relevance is installation activities, where I'm going to add in my new fuel stream. So we're going to give it a reference F3, it's propane. I'm going to add that. It's obviously used as a fuel on my boiler, my one boiler, so I'm going to add that into the list of source stream references for consistency. I would then need to update my list of sampling approaches, and again, I don't need to do anything really clever here because I'm still assuming that national inventory values are going to be used for this particular fuel rather than any bespoke approach. So the only editing I'm doing is to add in the new source stream reference for that fuel. Under the tiers section, as we covered before on the permit application, we need to add these in for each fuel or material source stream individually. So I will need to fill this in now with details of my new fuel that's been added to my drop down. It's a fuel, the emissions estimate is very low. So it's almost certainly going to be a de minimis source stream, and we're still calculating it. So I add in details of my metering devices. Again, we're going to do this via a node tier approach. So give it an arbitrary reference P1. I'm going to assume it's a zero uncertainty as before. It's not really a quantifiable figure because we're using the de minimis approach, and we're going to again, there's some log of propane cylinder purchases in the main office, which is going to be used as our source stream. So this marks a bit of a change in terms of how we handle variations, because previously the application was received on the ETS9 form, and depending on the actual information that was provided with that application form, it would either be a very simple or very complex job of actually updating the permit, and it was the competent authority that was updating the permit in each case. This time round, the operator is obliged to sort of update the information as necessary to actually update the permit application. And once they've done that, that submit button is pressed and acknowledged, and again the workflow moves on to the next stage, which is to prompt the operator to pay for the variation. We'll just do this very quickly. We'll assume that we're paying by credit card this time, so it's prompting us to telephone the office, card types that can be accepted, and by clicking on the button we're indicating that that's the methodology by which we're paying for our variation. So at this stage the variation is handed over to the competent authority to assess, and there's a residual work queue task in here that's basically advising us that that payment is to be received, and as soon as it's been received that payment task will disappear, and then within a short time scale the permit will be reassessed, redetermined and reissued, and at that point the old permit will sort of cease to have effect and will be updated with an updated consolidated version. And that's variations.